So my apologies. And I'm actually just checking something out here on streamlabs.com because there's supposed to be this is supposed to be my link, and I just want to see how other people see my link. I'm not gonna spend too much time doing this though. It says I'm live, and I don't know why I'm doing it from my phone because this sucks. And then I just need to do a slash home and just see what happens. If I don't see the stream, then I'm not gonna worry about it. Doesn't seem like that's gonna be the case, so I'm not gonna worry about it. And I am currently live, so let's go ahead and get this going. Um, so right here where we left off yesterday is we started with our test cases. We set up our test environment, and we have this stuff going on here, right? So what we're going to want to do now is just finish this out using all of the different scenarios that are going to happen. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and actually I'm just going to close this for a second. And I want to go over to my user router, and I want to open this in another side. And there we go there. So now, oh, and I forgot to do a sound check. I'm sorry. So now what we're going to do is just continue with that. And I'm just going to do a quick sound check. Yep, there we go. So we let's just go ahead and run our test environment, right? Run test, and we have our test script. So now you see how things are being a lot more automated now than before. And then we'll see in a second our test environment is going to be created. We're going to have our test variables get built, and then it's going to actually start executing these tests here. In a second, things are going to get a little bit more complex because we're going to start looking for different things in this test. Because as we already, I think our first router has been tested pretty good. Hey, wait a second, hit A, I guess. Let me hit that. For some reason, it didn't run the test in the beginning. I don't know why. Seems like we already have an error. So let me check this really quick. This should be fine, so I'm not sure what's causing this error. Oh, I think it's because I don't have Mongo's set up. I mean, not Mongo's, but we don't. I don't have. We're not connected to our database. So let me go to. What is it? Robo 3T. This may or may not be the reason, but I'm almost certain that this is why, because it doesn't have a connection. So it's like, okay, you set this local database, but it doesn't exist. I would have thought that our tests would have just failed. So I'm not sure what the deal's going on there. So here it's telling us that there are no tests found. So let me just hit A on this. Let me just hit enter. That's pretty weird. It's only supposed to take 4 seconds to run this, and now it's taking longer. I'm almost certain it's the Robo 3T, but it just hasn't booted up yet, so that's what I'm waiting for. I don't know what this is. So let's wait for Robo 3T to get set up. Oh, there we go. Yeah. I don't know what that was. So, all right. I don't know what happened. So, I guess we'll just continue. That's pretty weird. So where were we? We did our first test with creating our user. Now I just want to verify we did everything. Um, Yeah, so that's fine. And then we had our 409 error, which was we wanted to make sure that if the user existed, then we return this error. And then if the user did exist, we get that 201 that we were expecting. So now we want to hit this block here. And the only way we can hit that is if we create a user without some, oh, I forgot I can do this. So we have it going three ways. I don't want to go that far. Um, so right now we have name is required, email is required, password. Oh, all of these are required. So what I want to do is create a user without these. And the way this will work is we'll go and we'll say const. And I'm using this constant for the response, but as you can see, I don't need that everywhere. So in this router, I don't need it. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that out. And then we'll just have that right there off the rip. And then we'll do the same thing here. We're going to do await request. And we're going to use our app that we created yesterday. And then we're going to do dot post. And then we're going to use that same admin router. And then this time we want to send off a user that doesn't have a required field. So we can say, for instance, I don't know why this keeps popping up instead. I'm not even auto-completing. So this time we're just going to say name. We're just going to do name and email. So we're just going to say Tom Brady. So I'm not very creative when it comes to name. Email. Oh. Email is going to be T Brady. And then there's actually two things we need to test here with the email, because the email needs to what's the word I'm looking for? The email has to be unique. So we also want to make sure we get an error. Actually, we need to make sure that the email, not that it's well, the email has to be unique, but we're really looking for the email to be valid. There we go. tbrady@patriots.com. Right? Doesn't have to be anything crazy. I'm gonna say is admin. And actually, I'm not going to set anything because by having that default, we're fine there. And I'm not going to give a password. And that should be enough to cause this to be an error. So then we're going to do dot expect. And we're going to expect a 400 here. And then I think that's it. And I guess the only thing we should do is check and make sure it's not in the database. So this time we're going to just grab the same thing actually. So we're going to grab this, and then we're going to drop that in there. And then what we're going to say is we're going to expect 0 matches for this user, and that's just going to be this email here. And then since I'm trying to match it to a string, I'll have to put the string in directly like that. And then if I save this, we should have that test run. So I don't know what makes these tests run so long. So it didn't like the send. I think I missed something here. Yep. Too many comments. I mean, too many parentheses. Unexpected token. Oh. So it didn't like when I put. Okay, so this thing. I didn't know when I put that there. That's interesting. So then now we should be fine. It seems like I'm getting some extra characters in my test. So, and these are the 3 tests. So 1, 2, and 3. So they're all passing now. And now we want to do is we can do the same thing that we had here, and we just want to change this email to make sure that the email works. And this time we're going to give it a password. So we're going to say password is T T Brady 5 rings. And as you can see, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up here. So that's T Brady 5 rings. It's fine that we don't pass in anything to the is admin, because it's gonna automatically make it false. I guess over. No, it's fine. We're fine. So that's all we needed. And trying to think what else I want to, if I need to check anything else in here. Um, nope, that's fine, because I think the next test was supposed to be with the email being screwed up. That's what it was. So this time we're giving in the password to make sure that it has a password value, and then now we're just gonna take the @ symbol out of the email and then run it again, and that should actually fail this time. Should should not create a user with invalid email, and then we should still get that 400 error. And then there we go. So should not create user with invalid email. So that's pretty much how we're going to continue throughout the rest of these test cases. We're just going to write a script to say what kind of condition that we're testing for. And then we'll go and we'll say anywhere within the code, we'll look for all the different things that we can test once we have that going. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move over to our, I believe we can go down to the next router now, because we've already made sure that if it's missing one of the required fields, we get that 400, as we did here. We made sure it doesn't create the user with the invalid email, which we had our validator on here. And that's pretty much it. Um, we're not using this pre-save thing yet, so that's fine. I mean, we can verify the password is encrypted when it's stored. So we can go up here, right? And what we can do is we can use the same user that we had, and we can say expect user dot password, right? User dot password dot not to be, and then we'll literally just go user and we'll just grab the password that we use for this user here, which I believe is this. So we don't want it to be equal to this. So this is making sure that our password is encrypted. So that's one thing that we caught there. We didn't generate a token when we sign up, because when you sign up, we're going to do some email stuff as well. So what'll happen is we might generate the token at some other point, as opposed to this thing, some other point. So we've tested so far. Now we've actually tested this. We've tested not this yet. We've tested this, and this will automatically test itself when we run into the post router. So that's perfectly fine. So now, as you can see, by testing a whole concept, we can test multiple things, and we're also testing our models. So we're getting a lot more coverage in terms of code than we would. I'm not gonna say we're getting more coverage than some other way, but you can see that by testing like this, you're testing all different aspects of your code without having to do a lot of work. Um, Sorry, I'm just making another alert. I'm live now on YouTube. Subscribe now. Uh, and then I gotta drop my hashtags. I'm a millennial. We gotta make sure we got our hashtags in there. I really haven't found a way to do these kinds of posts. So I think another project I might do is like maybe an app or a web app or something, maybe a script I can run from my computer that ties into all my social media accounts and makes these kinds of alerts. That is actually a good project. And that might actually be done in a different language, maybe Python or something like that. I might do it in Java because I haven't used Java a lot lately. Um, at least not for my own personal reason. So now I'm comfortable. So let's go on to the next router that we're gonna test. And then what I could do, I mean, I can just, I could go back and do that describe. So I can go back and describe it to say that, hey, these are all of the tests for creating a user, right? So I can go like describe, and I believe I can just go post. This is so it's gonna be like post. Yeah, say it can be user. Let's say post, because we already know we're in here, and it's just say slash admin, right? We already have this, but the thing I didn't want to do is get admin. I guess I can do it like this, because we only have one post admin like this. So we say post slash admin should create a new user. So this is literally saying that on this user router, right? That's how we're getting it. And then we can even just say user post slash admin. You can do the same thing, right? Just to say that this is user, but we all know everything in here is user. So we're just gonna grab that and leave it like that, and then we'll go. I'm actually gonna delete this closing parentheses because we're not gonna see that for a while. Excuse me. And then down here is where I'll close the curly brace and then close the describe. So then now we have a nice organization with our code. And what you'll see is right now you just see test.user.js. When we do this again, we might see the description. See, look at that. And there's also some ways we can do some stuff to change the colors that print out down here, but I think we're good for now. So now it looks a lot more descriptive. Post slash admin. So now we know exactly what we're doing, which endpoint we're hitting. So you're getting a lot more information here in the test. So now let's just go down to the next router, and we'll do the same thing. We'll describe something, and we'll say this is going to be posts, and then we'll do slash login, and then we'll go ahead and start creating our test. So we'll say test should, and then you can also do some things like test that certain things are called. For instance, we can say we want to make sure that this, well, yeah, let's say we wanted to make sure that this pre is called. This is probably a bad example just because of where it is. But we're able to test that these things are being called by the responses that we're getting. Let me look in the middleware and see what's in here. And I should have pulled emails over into middleware. Oh no, it's not. It's not middleware. That's why. But for instance, let's say here, right, we have our auth. In auth, we might want to make sure that some of this stuff is happening. You might want to say ensure that auth is called, or I know there's another environment I have in here. I think it's only on the post though. So there is another middleware that I have in here. Oh, this is the model. I don't want the model. I want the actual router. Molter. If I wanted to, we could have pulled Molter into its own thing, but since we didn't really do a lot with it, I didn't do that. But we definitely could have had, all of this stuff moved over into its own auth thing and just called it somewhere else. That would have been perfectly fine. But back to the task at hand. So that's another thing too. So say we write out our task, and then we write out our test cases out, and then we go back and refactor our code. We'll catch if things are broken right away. Because as soon as you change something and save it, you'll be like, oh, that broke, and now you'll know you need to fix it before you even start to try to do anything bigger. So let's continue with our now login router, and which is to say should log in an existing user. So now we're being very specific. So now we're telling this exactly what we're expecting. And I believe this has to be asynchronous. And then we'll start with our test cases. Well, we already have the test case, but let's start adding the actual test. This does look weird to me. There we go. It's kind of weird how you got that little thing in there. But let's see. I need to go back to the user router now. You can close post router for now. So we're here, and we want to make sure that, we have to send some credentials off. And the credentials we're going to send is the email and the password. So let's do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say await request dot post, and then we need to tell it which router we're going to. So we're doing login here, and I forgot to make it a string. Login, login. There we go. Dot send, and this is the object for the credentials we're sending. So here we're sending in the email, and which email do we have up here? Because I believe this is the user that we have in our database, so we need to send in this information. And I'm not going to copy the space because it should have this user in the database without that information. It should have trimmed it so that way it has no white space like how we see it here. So and then I need to give it a password, and the password, it should be the same password we have here. So we take that, put this in as well. We'll have it. And I really didn't need to put the trim on these, because on the front end I would make sure that all the data that I pass in is valid, meaning I would validate the information before I send it to my server just to make sure it'll work. So what that does is it makes it easier for my server to process information, because I know the information that I send off is already validated. But depending on what you're validating, it's easier to let it be done on your server, and then you send the response back, and then you handle it that way, which is kind of what we're set up to be able to do that. So if we send this off, we should get our response, and then we should expect this to be a 200 error, because we're not creating anything new. We're just expecting our output. Wait, did I change something in here? I think I just, okay, there we go. So here we're expecting to get our user back, and we're expecting to get the token. So we can also make sure that we get that response information. And the way we'll do that is we'll say we're going to expect that 200. So let's just test that first. Oh, yeah. I forgot what you said. Request.post is not a function. So it seems like it didn't like, oh, slash. So you see, it's like, time goes on, you get a little bit more familiar with this stuff. So it's still not liking what I have in there. Request, oh, I see. App, forgot to put app in there. Now it's working. And there we go. And now you look at that, by having that described in there, we get these kind of breakpoints. so you know which test it broke. Because um, having this by itself, these printouts here are fine, but it just makes it look a little cleaner. It looks a lot more specific when you're looking at this stuff. And when you have a problem, you know exactly what's happening, which router. So then you don't really have to dig through this as much because you can just look and see where it is and what's going on. So that's perfect. And then we're just continue doing this. Another thing we want to do is now we want to check that token. There's, the first thing you want to do is say, okay, now we know we're getting a response back. So immediately we can store this response because we make our request. So this helps us make our request, and then whatever once this is resolved, it's gonna have a value. So we can go and just say request, right? Is going to be equal to that. And I didn't think about it before, but it seems like adding this expect at the end doesn't manipulate any of the stuff that we've done in here. So we still get access to that response, which is cool. As we've seen here, right? We were still able to do stuff with the response, which is pretty cool. I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to do the response without adding the expect because I want to see what gets printed out. I gotta do it like this. Ooh. And then comment this line out. And then I just want to do console.log request. Actually, it should be response. Response. That way I don't get anything mixed up. And again, I just wanted to check it like this because I remember when we had it with the dot extension, we had a whole lot of other stuff. So, oh, there is a dot user in here. So that's interesting. That is very interesting. So we can do dot body dot user. So I think I just have to break this stuff up. So let's go here. We're gonna keep that there, right? And the only reason why I'm doing this is because I think it's a little bit more verbose. Um, and this is the exact information that we're getting back. This is the user that we said that we're giving back. So that's really what I wanted because this is what is described as the user. When we send this information back over here, this is the user. So that's why I want to get it there as opposed to just grabbing it straight off the body. Like that. So let me try it, and then if stuff breaks, then we'll know. Response dot body dot user. And I now see why it was happening. I think once we change that, and once we can also test it here, right? The reason why when we tack this on, it is now a little bit different. I think we have more test stuff on it. So again, only one way to see. So I stand corrected. So now let me just go here and manipulate this stuff. Honey dot user dot password dot user dot tokens. And I'm just gonna start with that one first because I think I tried that before and I got an error. Yep, we're getting an error here. And reason being is unknown. Let's see what it says here. Because password is undefined. And that's true. So I think what's happening here is that we were just trying to access some properties that didn't exist. Because if we were to console log it, too far. Right, if we were to console log it over here, let's do console.log, and this will be first. And this is just so I know which one is which, comma, response. And then now we'll have two of these responses being printed out into the terminal. And you see now it's passing again. So if I go all the way to the top and look for that first, I didn't see first get printed out actually. But if we go down to the body, we can see what's on it. So then you got your request. And then if you look for the body, I didn't even see a body this time. I thought this was supposed to be somewhere else. So this looks like something that's coming off of, oh, I see. So this is the login one. I think I came too far. So I'm gonna do Control Shift F. It doesn't let me search in the terminal. And then I'm just gonna take this second console log off just so I can see which one's which. Here we go. So looking at this one, we see our headers, text, body. Here we go. The body really just sends us back this object. It doesn't have a .user on it. I'm kind of curious as to why that is. I'm almost certain that the reason why that is because I just passed my user data in like this. So I sent an object in, I sent an object back like that. So the only thing I do want to do is, just for consistency, is to look at my my course to see how they did it. And this is just for consistency. This isn't really, I mean, as you see, it's not that important. But if I want to write a test, then I want to make sure that you know, everything is matched up. Because when you look here, right, when they send that off, they're getting their user to be exactly that. Um, why it's not being returned as a user object for me is a different story. So that's very interesting. So the only thing I can think to do is to look at my response over here and say, okay, if we're sending this user back in this format, why is it different somewhere else? And that is the question of the day. Because when we look at our post and our login, when we make that response doing the same thing, we're getting our user as the user object. And I see why actually. So I think it's because when I say send, I'm just sending the user as it is. If I were to put these object tags on it, I wonder if it'll add the same thing. And this is kind of just, you know, curiosity. So let's see the body now. Yep, there it is. There it is. So that's why we're not getting the information that we were looking for. Because when we send the response, we're just sending the object. We're not sending our user back in any particular way. And when you look at, let's see, let's look at their creation. I think this is for user. And then when we look at the way they send the object back, we we'll have our answer. So you'll see that response.send sends just the user as an object. It doesn't create an object. See that there? That's it. You know, I was just curious as to why that happened. But you don't have to change your information for that. We just know that different when we send our data a certain way, we just need to make sure that the response matches. So, you know, questions answered, right? And then so then when we do this response, the reason why this one sends us back that object, like I said, is because of the way the router sends back the object. Um, I'm I'm not sure why. For instance, so look at that there. When we send our user back, I'm sorry. It's very interesting to me. Response.send user. Yeah. So all right. So I know I kind of went on a rant. Well, kind of like a mindless rant, right? But I like to just try to figure out what's going on more than just kind of do things and just kind of passively look and say, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. You know, and just kind of doing it, not really understanding why things are happening. So I think, oh, yeah, I need to do a few more things inside this test. So now I want to check the response. So now I want to expect that um, and since this user already exists above here, I can just say expect the response dot token dot to be the same token that is now going to, oh, I forgot, that so now I want to say I want to make sure that the token was created, and I want to make sure actually that's it. I want to make sure that the user that we get is the same user um, as this user, and then we want to make sure that the token matches. So let's start with the token, and we'll say expect response dot token dot. We'll just say we want to make sure it's not null, right? Not to be null. And this is good enough. You can make sure that it's, you know, we can go a whole lot more, you know, specific with this. We can go, okay, const user equals user dot find by ID, and we can pull out the ID for this particular user, and we can just grab this user one ID variable that we created, and we can just say, hey, make sure it's equal to that. And what this will do is we'll get our user, and now we can make sure they match. Or we can say it's not null, or we can expect it, excuse me, dot to be equal to this user dot tokens, and then we know it's going to be the first token in the array. So I think we have to do tokens 0 to get the first one, because when we're dealing with arrays, it's 0 indexed. So that's how we'll do that. We'll say the value of the token of the first token on the tokens array, and that's how we'll get that. And then we can also say we want to, oh yeah, so since we get the response, we can also go and say expect response dot user, right? Because now we're grabbing that user object off of here, and we want to say dot to be. I don't think this will work because of I think there might be some new stuff on here that might be removed when we send our user. I believe when we send our user, we remove some of this information here. So when we send that back, they may not be the same. So I think I might have to change that dot to equal. But this is just to show, some stuff that not to show some stuff, but this is just to show what's going on and how and the kind of the limitations of our test, but also to make sure that we don't overdo it as well. So we'll say to be that actually we want to make sure it's two is we want to say user one. We want to make sure it's that specific user, right? Oh, actually we can just say this user because we already have user one. So if we run this again, I'm expecting this part to fail. Oop, I forgot to take out these console logs. I think I already did take those. Oh no, I didn't. Here. Okay, so we're getting something different here, and I don't know which one. I don't know which expected. Oh, here we go. This is it here. So it's expecting. Oh, I see. It's supposed to be response dot body dot user, and I think this is supposed to be the same thing. Dot body dot token, because now we're sending that object. So we need to make sure that that matches. Eh, Ooh. Still not matching up. Oh, so again, the objects don't match because of the different information that's on it. So here we have a user that has these specific things. However, when we send that, wait a second. I don't know what all this extra information is. So I think it's just the let me just clear that and then run it again. Almost certain we're gonna see that same green text again. Yep. And I think this is which user is that? I think that's the one we're passing in. So we're saying we're looking for this user that we found and pull out of our database. Let's try equal. And to be is I forget which one's more strict. I think to equal might be a little bit more strict, so it might still fail. Yeah, but this is why it's failing. It's because we pulled our users straight from the database, and we're trying to compare it with the user that has a whole lot different information on it. So it's hard to you can't really make that comparison, but we can check that token. And by using this user to get the token, we're making sure that whatever token was returned here is the same token that exists on here. And we're actually doing two things really. We're making sure that one, the token exists on the user that was logged in here, and we're making sure that the token um, is there. Yeah, so you're making sure the token's put on the right user, and you're also testing the value. So those are the two parts that we got from this one setup here. And run that, still getting a failure. Let's see what happened here. Cannot read property 0 of undefined. Now I want to just go console.log. I forget I set this up, and I'm just gonna log the user. And I'm getting a whole lot more information than I expected. Whole lot more information, really. Oh, I think I know why. Because what I should do is I should do in the database. This is actually I'm searching for the value. I should have did user one dot underscore ID. Um, Reason being because the ID is actually an object. So I need to make sure that I do the same thing to get that object. Cannot access, where is this? Cannot access user before initialization. Oh. So actually two things are wrong there. I didn't await. Surprised I didn't catch that sooner. So that actually might have helped something else when I was doing the other test. So we can try this again actually. And then we'll do console.log the user. And then we can just kind of take a look at it and see if we could do that comparison. So you see here, we get the user, we get the ID, we get the password, we're getting all of this extra information. But if we tried to compare this to the other user, the user that came out here, we would have a problem. But by doing it this way, we verify that this is in fact that the token is on the correct user because we look it up we get the user by the ID and then make sure that the token's there, and then we compare the token that we created and that's sent back on the response to the actual instance of the user in the database. So this is pretty much the same thing as trying to do what I was trying to do set up earlier. So now that's verified, and we've also tested the response. So that's all good. And by I want to say by default, we automatically test this find by credentials method because that is what actually allows us to get the correct user and return it and do what we do for the generate token. So this is perfect. This is perfectly done. We don't really need to test anything else. We could test that. I mean, we can do the same thing that we've done before, testing the user object, but we don't really need to do that because we've already tested what's going to happen with the user.save in our first creation when we do our create user. So we don't have to go through and do this kind of testing again. You don't want to you don't want to be redundant in your tests. So now, we need to test breaking cases now. So if we go here, we need to figure out how we can get this error. And the way we can get this error is to say, okay, email and password don't match. So we can actually copy this test and we'll say should not log in user with invalid credentials. Should not log in with, there we go, invalid credentials. Right? And then another thing, it can just be a user that doesn't exist. And invalid credentials is, I guess that all kind of goes within the line, right? And just to make this wrong, we can just put a 2 right there, and then that's it. Or we can just give it the wrong password. So we can just say write email and take something off. Let's just take the snow part out. And then you'll see that when we save this, we should expect a 400 here. And when we look up this thing here, we want to say, we actually want to expect that this is null. So we want to expect that that doesn't have a value. And I don't think null is proper because we want it to be an empty array. So we should just say that that's an empty array. Let's see. Object is I think to be is when you're checking the same space in memory, but equal is a little different. Again, I said I'm not. It's let's see. I think the problem here is the type. Let me go on the user model and just hover over this, and we should be able to see quite easy. So what I think I have to do is say it's an object array. No, again, I could be wrong here. That notation looks bad. Let's just try. Let me just put null and see what happens. That to be null. Can't be null. Oh, I know what I didn't do. So what was supposed to happen is that by default, this thing is null. So if I go, I'm trying to think about how to set this up, because this is saying that it's equal to another object. So what I'm going to do is I want to just go and look at how the database was created with that user. Actually, I think I might be able to still get a look at the model in here. So if I can get a look at the model, I think I'm a little too far up. Nope. So they're able to test there. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here, but I just kind of like to speak from a point of reference. Oh yeah, he didn't do the tokens yet. The tokens don't come into play until here. So let me grab this one. And see if I can go back a little bit. And unable. Like I mean, like I said, I can, I can do this on my own. It's just nicer to be able to have a frame of reference to compare your stuff to. Okay, I don't feel like doing that. Tokens. I think this is where it is.
You now have an HTTP create authentication.
Is this where they create the tokens? Sure. But where they actually modified the.
Let's go ahead and get started by installing for
router. Oh, well, actually the model.
We'll see how
have it default to an empty array, I believe.
Period.
If only I
happens
can find it.
If things don't. Our case. Let's go ahead and expire our token after.
I see that I was in the wrong spot. I was at the part where he was still showing us how to
in this video
create it. So where are we? Is it here? Yep. Here.
Token.
And we'll see.
Now once we we're gonna get our token.
I want to go just. So right here they haven't actually created it onto his user. So I'm just gonna stop a bit, try to see if I can catch it. Seems like me trying to scan through.
Right here, I'll set required equal to true.
There we go.
Now there's no need for any other value to do anything.
Oh, never mind then. So okay, so I guess I was wrong. So what I need to do is I want to look at this user.tokens before we log in. And let's just see how that looks. If we go user.tokens. So when you do it this way, you should see that you can see what the object looks like before we try to compare to it. Thought I console logged that thing. And I think, oh, I see. I deleted the wrong part. So, mm. so, let's try that. So here we go. So it's showing the empty array. So I'm trying to now, okay, so we know it's definitely an empty array, like as I expected. I'm wondering why it's not allowing us to do that. So um so when I try to compare it though, it doesn't allow me to do this. So expected -1, received +1, object dot is equality. Let's check this out. Let's Control Shift C. We'll copy this, and it's saying here we got an array, but here we're getting core document array, which is interesting. So let's go over into that, and we'll say, oh, look at this, using matchers. Just uses matchers to let you test values in different ways. The document produces some commonly used matchers. Is with exact inequality. In this code, it returns an expectation object. You typically won't do much with these objects except when just in this code 2b4 is the matcher. When just runs, it tracks all the failing matchers so that it can print out nice. 2b uses object.is to test exact equality. If you want to check the value of an object, use toEqual instead. So we actually want to check the value of that. We don't want to check the object itself because they are different objects. And now we're still failing for a different reason now. And I think this is what's happening. So let's keep looking, I guess. Strings, arrays. Let's say just expect empty array. To B doesn't check the contents of the array. It only checks if the references are the same. You should use toEqual, which has some of the same smart checks. But for some reason, it's not working for us. And let me just go and look at this, Control-Shift-C. So we're saying we're receiving this core document array. So there are different types array. Just test. And we can see here, right? Core mongoose array seems to be inheriting the array type. In case you want to revert back to, so let's say just expect tokens to be null. Expect token array. Expect token to be empty array. Let's try that, to be empty array. I guess that might be some kind of built-in stuff here. Dot to be empty array, and let's see what happens there. Okay, so to be empty array is an A function here. So let's go back into the Jest documentation. You can check if an array contains a particular item using dot to contain, exceptions, and more. So we want to expect a specific value. To match. We're not looking for that. Empty array. Test empty array Jest. I guess we can test the length, right? So that's another way we can do it. We can say expect tokens, and I might have to do so we're gonna do two things. We're gonna go all the way back to when I print stuff out, and what I want to do is I want to do console dot, and I think what I have to do is I didn't think about this before, is if I just do that. So that's what I want to test in this thing here. I'm gonna do tokens, and then I'm also gonna do grab that first index and see what happens when I do that. I'm thinking, I know JavaScript. Well, the way JavaScript handles this stuff is a little different than what I'm used to. So I think that's why I need to print this stuff out, so I can see how JavaScript manipulates their data types. It's a little different than what I'm used to with Java. So now when I look, I thought I would have still at least been able to see the user. Oh, here we go. That's the first one. And the second one is undefined, as I thought. So it's literally just the console.token. So now if I do dot token, so this is the part I probably should have had the 0 there, and ran that again, because now I might get something different, because now we don't see that undefined anymore. So if I control C this, CLS to clear up everything, and then run our test again, we should see some different output, I believe, because there should be 2 of these console.logs. So I'm going to try it that way. So we're going to say, oh wait, cannot read property token if undefined. So that's already out of the question. So let's just run this again, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to get the type so I can figure out how to create a type that's like that and have it give me the error so I can look it up. Core document array. So let's do compare to array to empty array. Let's do that. Let's just take all that out completely, and we'll just look at the core document array. That's not what I was looking for. Core mongoose array. So I think this is the one we're talking about, because when we go here, we can't really see the output of it. But if we go, so this is how we'll look it up. I'm sure there's in 2 elements, schema, core mongoose array, instead of that. Add lean to your query from the docs. Mongoose documents returned from queries with the lean option enabled are plain JavaScript objects, not mongoose documents. They have so let's look here. .2 object. There we go. So let's try that. .2 object. To be that. So now here receive serializes to the same. So I guess we'll do .lean, I guess. If I do .lean, I think sets the lean option. Documents returned from the queries with the lean option enabled are plain JavaScript objects. They have no save method getter setters. So let's see what happens if I do this and try to compare those. Now, seems a little cheesy manipulating it in this way. So this, what all this means is we're probably doing something wrong here. So I'm gonna go back to Ye Olde Faithful and just see how somebody else does it. And this is really how I learn, by having other people, you know,
that is my pass first, 7
failing it, and
above.
then
That is my,
and then just having
that the token on ID the second.
I'm sorry, I got a little confused talking, and then trying to listen at the same time. But seeing somebody else do it after I've failed helps me a lot, because I'm able to look at somebody else's solution and then say, hey, okay, it failed that way for them. Why is that? As opposed to just kind of looking at their answer from the beginning and then saying, oh, you know, you may have, sometimes you might guess.
This check can easily go.
You might not, right? So, so for instance, like, look at this is one way that we can do it. So we can expect that the response body has the token. I guess in this case we didn't we didn't log in, so we have to look for the user, and then I'm a little just confused actually, because I don't know. In this case, we're just testing to make sure that there's no token was created on this, right? I guess another thing that I can probably do is to try to get to the user schema, and in the user schema, just trying to figure out if that method was called. So we can say expect user dot. Let's see if I can access the generate token, right? User dot, and now I'm just gonna scroll through and see what I have access to. I'm looking for colors. There we go. User dot schema dot. I wonder if generate token is gonna show up now. Generate token, right? And I'm gonna do dot to have been, to not have been called, actually, dot not dot to have been called. And the reason why I'm doing that is because what we did here with the find by credentials, we automatically throw an error if the user doesn't come back. So by making sure that that was called, and I think I should put 0 in there, and we can go to jest and check that out. So what I'll do is I'll do to have being called. Look at that, and we put the number of times in there. Cool. And actually we would have expected that to be called. And we can just try this out. And I think this might fail too. Reason being, I think this requires something called a spy. This matcher must not have an expected argument. Alright, not that way. So yeah, kind of learning on the spot here, so excuse the fact that it's a little drawn out. But I really like to be specific with what I'm doing. So first thing we can do, we can just say, let's get the console.log, and we're going to do type of user dot tokens, and we can figure out what type that is at least. So we'd see what type of data is it, and it's an object. So and we can say I can do this now. I'm gonna say, does that equal empty string? I mean empty array. And this is false. What about loosely? Still false. Alright, what about what if I did that? I think we're gonna get something else here. That is interesting. Dot to be null. It's the only thing I can think of there. I wonder if there was a way I can do like to be empty. Let's say to be empty, to be close to. Let's just type in empty. And I'm just going to type in array here. So I really want to get that array just right. Well, and I want to get this test just right. Type, nope. So I'm not getting what I'm looking for. And I really don't know how I want to go about looking this up, because it's very specific, right? This is use case specific kind of thing here. I want to make sure that the tokens are empty. Just test empty tokens. Try something simple. Empty mongoose array. Let's try that. So mongoose always initialize array attributes to an empty array. So I guess the best way to do this would just be to use the length, and we can just use the length, and we can just expect that to be 0. So now we know it's empty without actually having to create. We can do expect here. So that's a way around it. And look at that. So we found a workaround here. We made sure that the length is 0, which is the same thing that we were doing before. I just think it got a little bit complex because this is, when we look at the user model, we put our tokens in here. And so we said, oh, I think I know why that's wrong. And before I say anything, I just want to take a look at the user model one more time. And I want to look very carefully at how I wrote that user out, because the way I wrote that user could have created a bit of a problem.
Down below.
Like if I had that array
and right here, we can define what each object should look like. Each object is going to have fields of its own, similar to be an object before.
So
for
it's
other
an array, but it's like an array of a particular object, and that's the part that is wrong. So yeah, like I said, this thing is pretty complicated. Pretty complicated. But because if I try to do this, I think we get something wrong. So I'm not gonna waste time anymore. We got our test working, and that's really what matters. You can test to see if it's empty, and again, testing that, testing to see if it's equal to a specific array, empty array, didn't work because they're just not compatible types. So it's literally like comparing apples to oranges, and you can't really do that. So that's why, in a nutshell. So we tested for our 400 error, and we tested for our invalid credentials. And we don't have to test to say, oh, if the password or email is, we don't have to do both, because if the credentials are valid, that means it's not going to match any user that we put in there, even whether the user exists or not. And that's all that really matters. So actually, this one is done, and this is probably one of the more simple test cases that we created. So now we can go in and test our get router, actually the logout router. So what we'll do is we'll have to log in a user. So what I'll do is on this user, I'm going to create, and this is why you saw this before when I was back on the course. We're actually going to create a token on this because of, I think I have to do it like this. JWT. I want to do this outside of here. I want to do const create token. I can just do it right there. Tokens. I wonder if I have to do tokens.token, or if I can just do the tokens in their raw. Because what we're going to do is, in order to test this, in order to test logging out, we already have to have a token in there. And since we're more than likely want to do this in other places, for instance, when we start testing our other routes, we're going to have to do some authentication. And in order to be authenticated, we have to have a token on our user. So by going in and just creating that token, we're making it easy for ourselves. So I think I can just go in here and just create the array and just do JWT dot sign, and then I'm just going to create a token right in here. And I'm going to create a token. It's just going to say, okay, this, and it doesn't really matter what it is, right? And then we're going to do 8, I believe, is how we did that previously. Oh, nope, I was wrong. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this whole thing just as is. And I'm actually going to, I don't even, the expiration date doesn't even matter, because actually I'm gonna let the expires in 30 seconds, and you'll see why in a second. And I can make it expire sooner, I can create this and put 0 seconds on it. But I might do 2 seconds because anything longer than 2 seconds um, it's not going to take our code more than 2 seconds to run, as you can see here. I might do 3 seconds just to be careful. So having that, the reason why I did that is because now in a later place, I can go ahead and try to make sure that the token, I can create a test so to say, shouldn't verify an expired token. Because when the token expires, I don't really understand. I don't really know what happens, and we can actually look and see what happens. What happens when a JSON web token expires? So first of all, note that token expiration and revoking certificate. Expiration only happens for web apps, not for native mobile apps, because native apps never expire. Problem is, for web apps, if you set the do not use token for a week, use it less than a week, and get a new token for the one expires, for example. Make the browser. That's not what I'm looking for. I just wanted to see what happens when they expire because I never actually looked into that. I just wanted to know what happens. Is it JSON web token expiration? What happens like? I'm almost assuming that when you does expired JSON are expired web tokens delete it. That's probably a better way to search. I'm thinking that it probably doesn't delete. There we go. What happens? There we go. When your service issues access tokens, you'll need to make some decisions. Blah blah blah. Sure. When the access tokens expire, the application can use the refresh token to obtain a new access token. You can do this behind the scenes. Blah blah blah. The main benefit of this approach can use from third-party developers' perspectives and also refresh token. I really just wanted to see what happens, but it doesn't really tell me what happens. I wanted to know, like, are they deleted? Are they removed? I know they're just invalidated. And they don't really answer the question. Control F. What happens? So they really didn't answer the questions. Let me just type in expired web token. Yeah, I'm just gonna actually. What I didn't do is just looked at the expressed in seconds, describing a time span. So now I can just click on this, and then let's look at the documentation and see what they say. That's not what I was looking for. JSON web token. So we look at this thing and see what they have to say about it. Control F. All right, I'm kind of irritated. I was trying to find a simple answer, well, a question to what I thought was a simple question. Oh, here we go. So So basically, the best approach in this case, whatever. My question is, how valid you mean? Once you do this tutorial, this is what we're saying. Once validated, my question is how invalid user situation is maintained. Then what I mean is, let's say the client just got a dip, which is 1 week, but for various reasons, let's say we decided to invalidate the user and we don't. Okay, that was confusing. How should I? There are two major ways. Length of an XX token. So that didn't give me anything. So I'm assuming it just automatically deletes it from your database. That's just gonna be my assumption. Because when you try to verify it, I mean, the only other thing I can think of is to actually just go in and check to say, okay, is the token even existing when I have a timeout? That's probably the only way I'll really know for certain what's happening. And I can actually kind of test that here. And you'll see in a second how I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write another test, and I'm just going to call it test, right? And then we're just going to create our callback. Now I'm curious. Async, and then I'm going to do this. Create our callback, and then the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just say const user equals await user. I'm just going to grab all of this, and I don't think I need to do lean anymore. So I'm just going to grab this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see what happens when the time runs out. So now since I have the token timing out in 3 seconds, I'm just gonna set the timeout. I'm gonna set a timeout, and this is a way to just say, hey, wait 3 seconds. And I think I have to. I can't remember. I put the time in there. The only thing I'm gonna say, we're gonna do console.log user.tokens, and that's the callback. And then I put the timeout, I think, after this. So I think I do comma, and I'm going to say 3,000. And then yep, that's it. And, where's this at? Oh, I see. Do I do this? If I do it anywhere else, I don't know how it's supposed to look. So what happened was I was trying to refer to user, but it didn't have a thing. And I think I have to do this outside of this. So what I think I have to do is say user one dot tokens equals that. Otherwise, it doesn't know what I'm talking about. So add the token on after the fact. And it might even need to be like user tokens dot concat. And there we go. CLS and do it that way. So by using concat, I just throw the token at the end of the array. Now let's fill all tests as expected. Then I think the reason is just because it's empty. So I had something that was empty, and I tried to concatenate on top of, something that's either empty or undefined. Oh, I know what I did. I need to say const and user1 object. I don't want to do this. Because I save this, but I don't actually utilize the user. And I'll just show you a cleaner example. So when we look up here,
profile object is because I need to use it in two places. I'll be using user actually adds array, and we're going to create a new JSON web token using
oh, okay, did it right in there. So let me go ahead and fix this. And then the only thing I have to do is just create this. I feel like you used a string for that. So this array. So same way that it's shown in the database, it's the same way we're creating it here. And then I need to say token, right? And then set up my JSON that way. And we're not gonna have the same colors he has because I think he's using a different library, a different extension for making his stuff look the way with all the colors and stuff. So that's how we get this. And we just have, right now in the array, we just have one token in here, which is fine. So when we save this, we should be good to go. So, still getting the same thing. So, I think one of the errors just made it crash. So now we just have one failing test. And I did it again. User 1. Wait. I wonder if user 1 is referring to itself.
JWT.
Oh yeah, we already have the ID there. So it'd just be, I don't know why I make things more complicated than they have to be. So we do user 1 ID dot toString, and that should be it, hopefully. CLS. Any minute now. Okay, now I have two tests failing. So the reason why this test failed is because the length is now should be 2. Because we already have a wrong test. Should be, I think this test here should be 1 and not 0, and the reason why now, I think if I go here and I say, and I do, because now if I do this, right, and I say, if I go and grab that first, and so this is the first index of the array. So, and since it's a array of objects, this is saying the second index. And then if I go here, I say this should be null. I think that's how this will work here. And it might even be undefined. So we'll see if we still have 2 failed or 1 failed tests. Yeah, we still have 2 failed. And the reason why it's because it's undefined. And that's actually true because it doesn't exist. So we just say that to be undefined, or we can just just say that the length is only 1. That's, I'm just gonna put it back the way it was because there's already 1 in there. And over here, I believe once I logged in, I think that's the other test that failed because it's the wrong token now. This should be the second one, not the first one. And then now let me go ahead and fix that. Run this off, and they should pass. Yep, there we go. So yeah, reason being is once we added this token into the array, when we have our second token, we have to move it one space back as opposed to having it start at the beginning. And then here I wanted to print out the I'm gonna do this. Excuse me. I'll do it here. I'll put this in here. I thought this set timeout would await. I thought I can await this, but I can't. I want to say, 3 seconds after this test, I want to get the let's say just set timeout. Oh wait, can this work? So let's go over to the just documents and see and find out set timeout. I think this is a mock. Set the default timeout interval for test. This only affects the just file. The default timeout is 5 seconds if this method is not called. If you want to set timeout for all the files, and I think this is for a failure. Just wait 3 seconds. I'm just gonna put seconds. Just set timeout, not pausing test. There we go. Or set timeout. Oh, I gotta pass done. I forgot. So if I wanted to do it this way, I can set a timeout, and I forgot that timeout is supposed to be. I have this done completely wrong actually. So this is supposed to be a comma here, and this is supposed to be 3,000 because it's in milliseconds. And after that, I have to pass done in there. So done goes here, and I think I also have to put done inside of the async part of my function. Yes. Well, let's see how exactly this works. I think I have to put done right here. So just like how we did with another, oh yeah, there we go. And you see here we get the 1 token still, and this is after waiting 3,000 seconds. So now I'm going to move it to 4,000 milliseconds, which is 4 seconds. And I just want to see if it's going to get expired or not. I just don't know what, and I don't know how it's supposed to work. So only one way to find out how these things work. So now I'm making it wait a little longer, and now I just wanted to see what the value is, and it still has its value. So I don't think that timeout. What I could do is do we do JWT dot verify that token. So we'll use the user dot token, and we'll get that first one. We want to verify that token, and I think that's all I have to pass in there. So if we go back to our user router, and if we go to verify the token, might be on the router, I think. Control F, verify. Oh, that's going to be on auth. Verify the token, and I have to get the secret key. And the secret key is process dot env dot jwt secret key. There we go. So we're gonna wait 4 milliseconds, and then we're gonna try to verify this token. And then we'll say const verified equals that, and then here will tell me that if the token gets removed from the database or not. Const, and then we just do console.log verified. So it's a bit of a roundabout way to try to do some learning, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. And I forgot to pass done. Oh, where the heck I get document? I don't want that. There we go. So now it's waiting, and then it's running. So I didn't get my response though, it seems. When we verified over an auth, we didn't have to wait. And then I got the token here. So now I'm just gonna do the token. So we got our token here. So now I'm just gonna pass this directly in there. And just make sure I'm at least getting the right thing. And again, I mean, this is, you know, I'm drawing this out a bit just because I want to see how this stuff is being stored and how it works. Cannot read property 0 of undefined. So now it seems like it doesn't exist. And the one that, oh, token, not tokens. Typos will hurt you. So here we go. We're still getting the token, but I'm not seeing the, oh, look at that. The token expired, which is great. Because now I see what happens. Even if you have so now the expired token still exists. It doesn't get removed, which is weird. So now it makes me come to the question and say remove expired tokens. And I'm just gonna type in mongoose because and so now we can get rid of these tokens that when they expire, and so now we can actually get those tokens out of there. I know if I want to set the expire time for one collection with the expires property like so, but how can I set this property? For example, I have a schema. I want every token to be deleted from the creation date. Oh, okay. You can create a separate collection for holding authentication tokens and maintain one-to-many relationship. So what will happen is, what they're saying is we can create a separate schema, so to say, and just add that token onto our model, I guess onto our other schema, and then when that token is expired, it will just be deleted as a document, which would mean that the link to our tokens array would also be removed. That's one way to do it. But I'll look this up on my free time. And again, like I said, this is the kind of stuff that this is the reason why when you build something, you kind of build more iterations, because you learn more as you go. And then as you learn more things, you start to do more stuff. You'll say, okay, I understand this a lot more now. And, you start making decisions like, oh, it would be better if I tested my code in this way. Or, hey, I didn't know that, doing a particular thing, leaves extra, it's a waste of memory in the case of, storing those expired tokens. So we can do a refactor later, and we can say, okay, we're gonna make it so that any expired tokens are removed. And that's really how this process works in terms of kind of, updating your code and doing new things. So back to this test. I'm sorry, I got off the hinge there, but all for the sake of learning. So now I can just go ahead and get rid of this. Well, I'm not gonna get rid of it because, oh yeah, I can get rid of this because we're done with this router. Well, this specific route, not the router. So now we can go down into, and we're gonna go down to the next post for logging out, and this is why we created the router for not the router, but this is why we created the token, because we want to try to log out a user, and the only way we can do that is if the user already has a token, because why should we go through the process creating the user and doing all of that unnecessarily, because it's already created. So you want to try to make sure that your tests are as realistic as possible. So now we'll say we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do const dot response, const response equals request. So we're going to await our request. We're going to pass in the app, which is pretty much all of our express stuff there, and then we're going to do post, and then in our post we're going to send in the route that we're using, which is log out, and then we'll go and say, oh, that's all we needed there. So now we'll do dot send, and with this I don't think I actually have to pass. Oh yes, I do. I have to set the I have to do something with the header, but for some reason I don't. The chaining is getting disrupted. So I'm gonna go look at the super test. What's the word I'm looking for? I want to look at the documentation for this. Reason being is I want to set. There we go. So we can just do dot set, and then we're gonna set all of this stuff to how we did in, if it lets me. We're gonna do everything just like how we did in Postman, where we're gonna set the authentication. So we're gonna say authentication, and then we're going to go and we're gonna put the value in there, just like that. And the value is gonna be this bearer, as we had before, and then we need that space, and then right after the space, and I'm doing this incorrectly, these we're gonna use those special single quotes, so that way we can get we can pass in our data for our token, and then we'll just go user one dot tokens, and we want to get that first token, and then we're going to get the token value off of this object, and that should do it there. And now I think I can do dot send. Let me drop this down to another line. This is pretty long. So we set the authentication. Now we're going to do dot send, and what we're sending is, oh, I think that's it. So now on the end of this, we're going to expect our 200 response. And then I forgot, this is supposed to be in its test. So we say test, and this will be should the log out a user, right? Should log out a user that is already should log out a user if they are logged in. A bit of a mouthful there. And then don't forget your async. And then we create our, go here and so now we set our authentication, so we're giving it our token here, and then so all this stuff amounts to what our response is going to be. So now we're expecting that 200 response to say, hey, you made it. And then we're also going to expect our response dot body. Well, actually no, we're not sending anything back. So now what we have to do is we have to look our user up. So we have to do const user equals, you know, so we're going to look our user up, and then we're going to expect the user not to have any tokens. Dot tokens dot length dot to be 0. And that's how we did that. And I probably should have just tested the first part first to make sure it worked, but that is okay. We do have a failure in here, and I think I know why. Seems like I have too many. I don't know why I keep getting this weight surrounding my stuff. So maybe I'm hitting like Control V, or I'm hitting a key somewhere that's putting that stuff in there. So, oh, I think I know why. So let me change this. I think this is the problem here. Because 24, I do 1 day. So now that token's good for a day. I just think the 3 seconds is what caused it to fail. Nope, we're still unauthorized. Authentication bearer. So I believe I'm sending this incorrectly. Let's see. So let's go to the documentation and see how we can set the actual authentication on this thing. Better yet, we can cheat. So have that. I never sent. So I want to say that's what happened, because I never sent it. I never sent out the data. I don't think it ever. That this is a. Never mind. So we're still getting our unauthorized message, and with this one, I really don't know what caused it. So we did our log out there. Let's see. So when we set this thing to log out, we should still have our user token available, because this token is going to be valid for a full day. So when we test here, and don't worry about what we did up here, because these are isolated. So when we got to this test here, it should be able to get the correct token. So now I'm just trying to look at this thing to see if I spelled anything wrong. That's more likely. So we have our request, we send our app, we do a dot post, and that's from the logout. And then we set our authentication, and then we send that off. Authorization. Oh, I put authentication. There it is, right there, right before my eyes. Authorization. And then if we send this, we should be fine. So it was as if we never sent the token. And there we go. So that's working, and actually both parts are working. So we made sure that that length on that token is now 0 as opposed to 1. So that's good. And if we go down to trying to think of another way, and then we can also say we can also make sure that somebody's unauthorized. So we could go here, because, and the way this works is, I think this is before each, and the before each, I can't remember if it runs before each before, or if it runs before that describe. And what will happen is, if depending on how that before each is set up, we'll be able to expire the token, so to say, and we'll be able to look and do some stuff to say, okay, just to get that 500 error. I can't think of a way that we would get a 500 error off the top of my head. So for instance, runs a function before each of the tests. Yeah. So it's fine the way it is. Let's see, should log in. So let's do this. We're gonna test for that 400. So what we'll do is we'll say should not should throw error if token is invalid. Or expired. So what we'll do is we'll say, and another thing we can do is we can add another token on here that's expired immediately. That's kind of another way we can do this, and we can do comma, and we can just grab this thing actually, right? If we do this and then put another token here, and then we just say 0 seconds, right? That token never exists. Well, I'm not gonna say never exists, but it's never valid. So everywhere where we have stuff being this will still be 1. This should still be 1. 1 1. Actually, I was wrong. That should still be whatever number it said it was going to be. Here it should be 1. This should be 1, and then this should be 2, and then this should be 2, if I'm correct. Oh, nope. So let me change those 2's back to 1's. And then I think I screwed up something in here. So it is 0, I guess. So I guess when it's expired, it is 0. interesting. I don't know. Could be wrong. So here we got unauthorized. I see. We try to create. No, we should be able to create a new token. Oh, that's fine. Let's get a chest passing again. And the only thing we want to do is, instead of doing this, we'll just make something up. And we can just create our own token up here. So we'll just say, we'll make this a whole, I don't like that. But I want to use a real token. So I'll just use create it in a constant. I might use it later. Let's see, const invalid token is going to equal. There we go. So then now we'll just say in here, instead of bearing that, we'll just bear our invalid token. So that way it is still a token object. I don't think I like that. Oh, I see. There we go. They don't like the way I did that. I thought that was pretty smart. Oh, wait. This seems like it's still picking up the, oh, there we go. Okay. So now we're getting, wait, why is it giving us a 200? If, oh, I see why. We're passing, no, we should not be authenticated for this. We should get that 401 because the token that we're passing in is invalid. Oh, I see. It's using the ID here to validate that that token exists on that user ID, which is crazy. Yep, that's what happened. And I can actually keep the same ID, but I'll just change the key, and that should do it. Yep. And then where are we? When we do our second test, the length goes back to 1 because they're isolated. Because these two tests are still isolated, so it still has, the token still exists. If we go down to here, I'm trying to think what would give us a 500 error. Let's look at our auth and see. We throw the error if there's no user for that token, which happened here. And we did get that 401. And that's how we get that. Now, in terms of a 500 error, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how we do that. It would have to be, if you couldn't, well, if we didn't have our auth middleware, that would be the only way I can think of doing that. Otherwise, there'd be no other way, unless the token was never there. So let's try to do this without a token and see what happens. So without a token, we still get the 401, which makes sense. So I was making this process more complicated than it had to be. I tend to do that a lot, but it's always nice to, you learn pretty quick when you start doing stuff that you don't have to do. So we send it without a token. We're getting this. And that's still cool. But I wanted to see if I can find a way to throw this 500 error. I can't. Let's see. Let me just think real quick. How to throw 500 error express. So to be what causes 500 error. So if we can find some causes, then we can do something. Yeah, so I don't think we have to create it. I just wanted to see if I can make the test cases a little bit more verbose. um, just 500 error. I want to see if we can do this. Let's see what kind of thing they're doing here to get that 500. I don't know. The only way that will happen is for an internal server error. So that would mean while it's trying to look this up, like for instance, it would have to get past all of this, and then it would have to throw an error. Oh, wrong. It would have to throw an error probably here when it tries to save the user, and I don't know how it would do that. Force mongoose to I mean there's no way to do that. At least not off the top of my head. So it would just be like the saved failed because we already handled everything else. The only other thing I can think of, nope, because if this is empty, it's not going to change anything. So this is kind of a bulletproof kind of thing because if we don't send a token, then it doesn't matter because it just this runs and it's still fine and it'll just save the user. The only way, like I said, is to disrupt this process here, and since we don't really have direct access to it, and there's no real point to do that either. Like we don't get anything out of it. And you can kind of think of your test cases like money. If you're not getting anything from it, you don't really have to do it. Trying to force your server to give you an error, when it wouldn't is kind of redundant. Well, not just redundant, but it's unnecessary. So now we're gonna go post and do this log out all. I wanted to try to go and test all of these, but I got pretty sidetracked today. So I'll do this log out all, and then I'll call it a day here, and then we should be able to wrap up this test suite tomorrow. Log out / all, and that's all we needed to do here. I'm gonna go ahead and add in the callbacks. And this doesn't have to be asynchronous. I think it can't be asynchronous. I did it anyway somehow. It's probably just a habit, yeah. Alright, so now let's go for our test. So we're going to say test, test this / nope, should log out user from all sessions. Right, so we have that, and then we're going to do a asynchronous function, and then we now have our test block. And inside of this test block, we are just going to, I mean, it's pretty much going to be the same exact thing that we had with our previous test block, with just a regular log out. The only thing I can think of is to say put another token on here, and oh, I see what the problem was there. I put my token in the wrong spot. So this is a pretty big thing. It's supposed to be an object, so I need to do a token object. So I think that should be fine. And when I run this test, we're gonna get a problem. So I need to make that 1. Oh no, that's fine. This should also be fine. Where are we? Instead of 1, I think this should be 2 now. This should also be 2. This should be 2. I should have just ran it and just see what happened and then fixed it. But we'll just send this response off, request. I'm just gonna copy it from the first one. Here we go. I'm gonna copy the guts here, and then drop it in here. And actually, this should be 0 because now we're deleting both of them. This should just be 1 actually. So let me just run that and see what happens. So yeah, so let's see if the first one is screwed up. So I think I'm actually just pointing to the wrong object. So where are we? Tokens 1. Oh yeah, I know what happened. Just do Control F. I'm gonna do tokens 1. There's only one match for this. So I believe when we logged in, this is supposed to be 2 because this is now the 3rd token on that on the tokens list, because we already have 2. And here we should log out a user if they are logged in. So when we use this log out, they're saying that we should wait, where are we? So here, when we log out of a session, we're getting so when we're logging out here, we're expecting to have 1 token, except it's saying we're supposed to have 0 tokens. Having a hard time believing that. Let me just save first, and then I can validate that. Oh, I see. I need to move to from where I am. Instead of this being the first one, this is actually I don't know which one this would be. so I don't know which token they're used to log in. Um, let's just go to the next one on the list. Let's see if the logout uses the last one. Actually, should log out of the user if they're already in. This should use whichever token we just sent. So if I sent it the token, so if I send it the first token, so if I make this the first token in the list, then the length should still be 1 because we just removed 1. This is interesting. And I wonder what happens if you change so let's check out this JavaScript filter function. JavaScript filter array filter. Creates a new array with all elements that pass the test implemented. So we want to test these and this token is an object. So we say the token is not equal to the token that we sent in, then we'll remove it. Well, we'll keep it, and so it should only remove. That is very interesting because I have the 2 tokens up here, so I wonder. So what I want to do, I'm just going to do console.log. Nah, I already know the token's there because I need to, let's see here, let me slow it down. I see. So when we run this off and we log out from all of our locations, should log out a user from all sessions. Actually, the funny thing is that one's working. Test should throw error if token is invalid or expired. So this is the one we're looking at here. So we didn't send anything into this logout. So, and because of that, we shouldn't have had any problems. So should throw error, should log out a user if they are logged in, should log out a user if they are logged in. Interesting. So for this one, I'm just going to do a console log, and this is why, as again, I said should have did everything one by one. Console.log. Console.log. I should do. Ooh, I see. So I'm going to say console.log user. And actually, I'm just going to log out the whole user. Reason being, I just want to see what the response is looking like, because either I screwed up my logout route or I screwed up my I screwed up somewhere else. And the way I can test this easiest is to go and connect to my MongoDB And I'm going to go ahead and look at our users. And I'm going to I'm just going to go to Postman, and I'm going to fire off a few logins, and then I'm just going to log out from one specific session. So right now we have 0 tokens, which is good. And when this is done loading up, we'll log in a few times. So let's go to log in a user, and we're just going to go ahead and log in. Oh yeah, I did a stop. Let me just run up my development server. So we'll do npm run dev. So go back into Postman, send this off. Logged in, log in again, and we're gonna log in one more time. So now we have 3 tokens. So now if we just go to get a user, actually let's get users so we can see them all. And oh yeah, I forgot it's not gonna show us the token, but if we go and look at Robo3T and we look here, we have 3 tokens there. So now let's go back into Postman, and we'll just hit log out, and we'll hit that once, and we got the 200. Now let's go back into Postman and check on that, and we do have 2 elements here. So it seems like something is wrong with the test and not the code, which is good, because I know this one here is actually removing all of the tokens. However, that first test should not be removing all of the tokens. We can go ahead and delete that. So we have to go and check what's going on there, because when we get our tokens array here, it is actually empty, and I don't see why it's empty unless this is the same exact token. But I can't see that happening, because when we look at our user and we hit generate token, oh, I see. I should have looked at how it looked in the database before I closed it. So let me just go back to that really quick. Reason being is because I want to make sure that when I did this comma here, that I did it correctly, and I'm not too sure if I did. So let's check the users, and I'm in the test actually. I didn't mean to come here. I meant to go to the local version. So we go here, we look at our 2 elements. I really just want to see if view document, there we go. That's exactly how it looks. You have your token, you have an ID for it. So maybe I should create IDs for these tokens as well. Didn't see that anywhere, but maybe I should, because I think maybe what's happening is that it's not being able to identify one token from another. So let me just go here, and I'll just say ID, that's underscore ID, right, equals, well, equals this, and then it'll just be this. So we'll give these some IDs, and like I said, this could be wrong, but you know, since haven't seen anything like this, can't hurt but to try. And yeah, so somehow I have this thing creating a point where we're deleting all of the tokens, which shouldn't be happening. And I'm almost certain that it's because of what I'm doing. So this user logs out with this specific token. And actually there's really nothing to, fix there, because I'm telling it explicitly which token I'm removing. It's this one, right? Um, and then we can just say, this one I know it works because we're at the third place. So I don't have to test, to make sure the length is 3 because it's right there. Um, with the same token, when we say log out, and we send in that bearer with the first token, we shouldn't be seeing it. So I'm just really confused with how this is working here, because I tested the logout router, and it works the way it says it's supposed to work. So let me just take a look at this and figure out if I can see any loopholes. Tokens dot length. When we log this out, we see exactly that the tokens are empty, and this is for jsnow, and that is our user 1. So that is correct. Now, what I can't verify is, before the test even runs, I'm going to print out the user. I'm going to print out the .log. I have to do this. Right. And then I just want to do console.log user. I know it's kind of a waste to just do it twice in terms of calling that user, but just want to check something. Can't be too safe. Test suite failed to run. Why is that? Hit A and try to run that again. I think it's not running because I'm doing this twice. To override the user. Yeah. So when I do it the first time, wait. This is very interesting. We look here, and we're actually getting our user now, which is wicked. So when we run this the very first time, we get the user with all of the stuff that it's supposed to have. But when we run our code and look for our user, we get something completely different. So if we comment this out and then reactivate this one, which is literally the same thing, we see a different response for our user. So now the tokens are empty. So what I'm thinking is somehow when we're trying to log out, it's clearing. That's very interesting. I haven't seen that before. Let me see what happens if I send in the last token as opposed to the first token. I want to see if it has just something to do with the order. Nope. That's very weird. So, I don't know. Because there's still only one user, even though it can have more than one token. And if I do 2 here, it should be undefined. We should have a problem. Yeah. So, I don't know how, I don't know how to walk away from this one. We send it off with a valid token, and our code is supposed to remove that token. And then let me put that on there. And then I have no idea. That is very interesting. I've never, like I said, I've never seen that. Granted, I don't do this often, but I've never seen that. It's a very interesting error. I'll have to look into this one as well. So, yeah, that's let's see. I wonder why that's interesting. Log out, deletes. Actually, I want to see how he handled this. Because
second is the value we're trying to set. Now this is going to include that comes endpoint on your own. So then we're going to go ahead 11 passcode back. What?
So I believe he has a logout router. Should so he doesn't have one for a logout. Let's see.
Well, the goal in this section is sort of the both would
Login, deleting. Let's look at user wrapping this up and see what else is going on.
My down APG. So that is going to correctly upload that file to the following end.
So I guess he skipped that part for logging out. Yeah, so I don't know about that part. Let's see, let's see, super test, log out, deletes all tokens. So I don't know what happened there. And that's interesting. I just got a good night text from my girlfriend. Sorry about that. Gotta respond to my girlfriend. 'Cause So yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting point that we're at right here. Because it's working in some cases and not in others. So I'm not sure exactly how to carry this out. Um, these tests are independent of each other. So I'm of the mindset that I know this works. And it doesn't help that this logout all actually logs out from all of them. And having this one actually not do it is very helpful. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll give it a few more minutes, and then if not, I'll just come back tomorrow because I realized that when I get into these sticking points, easiest thing to do is just start over another day. I just want to see if there's anything that I can see that may indicate why my error is happening, because we should only be deleting one token, not all of them. Mm. So let me look back at our logout. So, and this is how we're modifying the token. Sorry, these earphones make my ears itch. Um, it's like it, it senses like suffocating my ear. It's like you sweat just a little bit, and that little bit of sweat just itches. Probably sounds disgusting. Um, yeah. So, and we specify which token is supposed to be deleted. So I was trying to think that maybe we screwed something up. So, and because of that, it deleted all the tokens. But that isn't the case. Hmm. The only so and the reason why I know this part is fine is because we're able to look our user up. And when we look our user up, we don't see any changes until after this operation is done. So somehow this operation is deleting both of these tokens. But as you can see previously, if I can get that high up, um, when we had both tokens, they're not even, I want to make sure that these aren't the same exact token. Um, I doubt it because I think they start to differ down here. Yeah, this is where they start to differ. Nope. 8W2X HDH5WHHGCJQU. Oh, wait a second. Oh no, I think the differentiation is where they differ is here then. EYJHBCIO. Unless, because these tokens are generated at the same exact time, it's creating two tokens of the exact same thing. Because I think the way these tokens are created, it's that it's based on the time and it's based on some other factors that they use to create unique IDs, well, to create the tokens. Um, I believe those play a part. But I can't see any differentiation between these two tokens. And then what I'll do is I'll just go up back into this thing, and what I'll do is I'll say I want to compare those tokens. So I'm just gonna say user one. I'll do a console log. We'll say console.log, and we'll say oh, actually, I gotta go ahead and call it a night. I'm getting a call, a good night call. So we'll pick this up tomorrow, guys. Have a good evening.